Human gives the alien girl a place to sleep, and the alien girl says the room locked itself for him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main character. Ethan Parker had never been one to believe in the extraordinary. He was a simple man, living in a modest suburban home in a quiet neighborhood. Ethan worked a regular 9-to-5 job at a local tech company and spent most of his evenings alone, watching TV or tinkering with small projects in his garage. But everything changed one fateful night. Ethan was walking home from his car when he saw her. She stood in the middle of his driveway, looking lost and disoriented. She was unlike anyone he'd ever seen before, tall, with striking green eyes, and her skin had an almost ethereal glow to it. Her clothes were unlike anything he recognized, shimmering in ways that suggested they were made from materials far beyond what Earth could produce. "Are you okay?" Ethan called out cautiously, his heart racing. She didn't respond immediately, just stared at him with a calmness that unnerved him. Then, as if snapping out of a trance, she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "I am Zara Lynth," she said. "I need help." Ethan, still in shock, found himself doing what any good-hearted person would do. He invited her into his home. Zara explained that she had come from another world, one far away, and her ship had malfunctioned. She didn't know how to fix it, and she had nowhere to go. Ethan's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. But looking into her eyes, he saw no signs of deception, only a quiet desperation. He led her inside and offered her a place to rest for the night. He didn't expect anything strange to happen. It was just a night like any other. He showed Zara to the guest room, where he told her she could sleep. He made sure she had everything she needed and went about his usual evening routine. But when he returned to check on her later, he found something strange. The door to the guest room was locked on its own. He hadn't locked it himself, and he certainly didn't remember hearing it click shut. Confused, he knocked lightly. "Zara," he called. Her voice answered almost immediately. "The room locked itself, for you." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The last few minutes had felt like a blur, but now, standing outside the locked door, he realized that the night was just beginning to spiral into something far stranger than he could have ever imagined. Ethan stood frozen outside the guest room door, his hand still resting on the doorknob. He could hear Zara's calm voice from inside, though the words seemed cryptic, almost otherworldly. "The room locked itself, for you." His mind raced as he processed the strange events of the night. A part of him wanted to dismiss it as some kind of strange misunderstanding, but deep down, he knew that something far beyond his understanding was unfolding. His first instinct was to call the police, but something about Zara's presence made him hesitate. She didn't seem threatening, just different. "Zara," Ethan called again, this time his voice trembling slightly. "What do you mean, the room locked itself?" Silence followed for a moment, and then her voice answered, softer now, almost soothing. "I did not do it. The room, it is a reflection of what is. It locks to protect." Ethan's mind buzzed. "Protect from what?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You do not understand yet," she replied. "But you will." He could hear her shifting inside the room, but the door remained firmly shut. He reached out again, knocking softly. This time, he didn't hear her voice for a moment. Was she even there anymore? He felt a strange chill run down his spine as the quiet stretched on, longer than it should have. After what felt like an eternity, the door clicked open, and there stood Zara, her expression unreadable but calm as ever. "I need to rest," she said simply, as though the last few minutes had been of no consequence. Ethan opened his mouth to ask more questions, but the words caught in his throat. There was something about her that made him feel like his questions were trivial, even irrelevant. Instead, he simply nodded and stepped aside to let her pass. She walked past him with an unsettling grace, her steps almost silent, as though she wasn't fully touching the ground. Ethan watched her as she moved, feeling a strange mix of awe and fear. He had no idea what to make of this woman, or whatever she was. As she entered the room, the door closed gently behind her. Ethan stood in the hallway for a long time, trying to make sense of everything. His logical mind struggled to keep up with the absurdity of the situation. A woman from another world, a room that locked itself, and now, the feeling that Zara wasn't entirely human. He paced back and forth in the living room, thoughts spiraling. There had to be an explanation, right? Maybe she was just a woman in a strange outfit, someone with a weird but coincidental story. Maybe the room had malfunctioned, or maybe she had locked it herself for some reason. But nothing about her felt ordinary. Ethan stopped pacing and turned toward the kitchen. He needed to clear his mind. A glass of water would help. As he poured the water into a glass, he felt a strange tingling sensation on the back of his neck, like he was being watched. He glanced up, but there was no one in the kitchen. Yet the feeling didn't go away. His heart raced again, and he found himself wondering if he should confront her. But then, just as quickly, a strange calm settled over him. He realized that he was no longer in control of the situation. Whatever was happening, whatever Zara was, it was bigger than anything he could understand. He had let her in, and now there was no turning back. Ethan sat on the couch, staring at the clock on the wall, its ticking the only sound that filled the otherwise silent house. The events of the past few hours had shaken him to his core, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something even stranger was unfolding. Zara was in the guest room, but the door remained closed, just like it had been when she had entered earlier. The room had locked itself again, just like before. He couldn't understand it. He had never been one to believe in the supernatural, but this felt different. It felt real, and it felt like it was just the beginning. His mind raced. He had let her in, had helped her, and now he was trapped in a situation he didn't know how to handle. A part of him wanted to demand answers from Zara. He needed to understand what was going on, but another part of him, the part that felt that strange, unexplainable connection to her, wanted to give her the space she seemed to need. After a few minutes of indecision, Ethan stood up and walked toward the guest room. He hesitated at the door for a moment before gently knocking. "Zara?" he called softly, hoping she would answer. A few seconds passed, and just as he was about to knock again, the door swung open. Zara stood there, as calm as ever, her green eyes meeting his. "I was wondering when you would come," she said, almost as if she had been expecting him. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He didn't know where to start. I don't understand," he finally managed. "What's happening here? Why is the room locking itself? Why are you here?" Zara's expression softened, and she stepped aside to allow him into the room. Ethan entered, but he still couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something he wasn't meant to understand. "I have told you before," Zara said, her voice gentle but firm. "The room locks itself to protect, and I am here because I need your help." Ethan raised an eyebrow, confused. "Help? From me? How can I possibly help you?" Zara nodded slowly. "You are more connected to this situation than you think. The room, the lock, it's all a manifestation of what is yet to come." "What do you mean, what is yet to come?" Ethan asked, his voice a mix of fear and curiosity. Zara took a deep breath and walked over to the window, staring out into the night. "Where I come from, there are forces, things that exist beyond your comprehension. And there are places, like this one, where time and space are not what you think they are. I am here because I have crossed into this world, but I cannot stay forever. There is a balance that must be maintained, and for that, I need your help." Ethan shook his head, struggling to understand. I don't know what you're talking about. This is all too much." Zara turned to face him, her eyes piercing through him as if she could see right into his soul. "You will. In time, you will understand. But for now, you must trust me." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine as he tried to process her words. There was something about her presence, something about the way she spoke that made him feel like she wasn't lying, but the whole situation seemed impossible. "How can I trust you?" he asked, his voice low. Zara's gaze softened. "Because the alternative is far worse than you can imagine. There are things that would destroy this world, Ethan, and they will come unless we act." Ethan swallowed hard. His mind was reeling, his thoughts scattered. He had no idea what he had just stepped into, but he knew one thing. The world he knew was never going to be the same again. Ethan stood in the dimly lit room, Zara's words echoing in his mind. "The alternative is far worse than you can imagine." He couldn't shake the weight of her statement, a dark foreboding that made his stomach churn. He had never considered that his quiet life could be intertwined with something so vast, something beyond his understanding. Zara had crossed into this world, and now, for some reason, he was part of it. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. The room felt too small, too enclosed, as if it were pressing in on him from all sides. "So, you're saying there are forces out there that would destroy everything?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zara nodded solemnly. "Yes, these forces are not bound by the rules of your world. They come from places where the laws of nature do not apply, where time and space bend in ways you cannot comprehend." Ethan's heart raced. "And you think these forces are coming here? To Earth?" "They already are," Zara replied, her voice low, almost mournful. "I am here to stop them, but I cannot do it alone. That is why I need your help." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, trying to process everything. It all seemed so unreal. "But I'm just a regular guy. I don't know anything about stopping otherworldly forces, or whatever it is you're talking about. How could I help?" Zara's gaze softened as she stepped closer to him. "You are more important than you realize. Your world is more connected to these forces than you think. It is not a coincidence that I came to you." Ethan swallowed, trying to push down the rising panic in his chest. "So what now? What do we do?" Zara's eyes darkened. "We must prepare. Time is running out." Ethan nodded slowly, feeling a sense of urgency that mirrored her own. "How do we prepare?" "There are places," Zara said, her tone grave. "Places where the veil between worlds is thin. I need to gather certain items, certain symbols, to protect this world from the forces that are trying to break through." The room locking itself was just the beginning. "It's a warning." "A warning?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "A warning for what?" Zara stepped back, her eyes distant as if she were seeing something far beyond the walls of the room. "The forces are trying to tear open the fabric of your reality. They are looking for a way in, and when they find it, there will be nothing left. Your world will collapse, and everything you know will be consumed by darkness." Ethan's mind raced as the weight of Zara's words settled in. The room, the lock, the strange energy he had felt earlier, it was all connected. He had felt it, but he hadn't understood it. Now it was clear. "So what do we do to stop it?" Zara's eyes sharpened. "We begin by gathering the symbols. Each one is a key to closing the rift. But we must be quick. Time is not on our side." Ethan felt a strange sense of determination rise within him. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew one thing. He couldn't just stand by and let it all happen, not without trying to help. "I'm in," he said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling inside him. Zara looked at him with a mixture of relief and something deeper, something almost like respect. "Good," she said. "Then let us begin." Ethan followed Zara through the quiet streets, his mind buzzing with questions that he didn't know how to ask. They had left the house in the dead of night, and the cool air felt heavier than usual, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Zara walked ahead, her movements graceful and purposeful. Ethan tried to match her pace, but the weight of everything he'd learned was slowing him down. He didn't fully understand the danger Zara had described, but something in the air felt off, like the calm before a storm. They reached a small, inconspicuous building on the edge of town. Zara turned to Ethan and spoke in a hushed tone, her voice carrying a sense of urgency that made his heart race. "This is where we begin. The first symbol is inside." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine as he looked at the building. It was an old, abandoned church, its windows dark and the stone walls covered in ivy. "What's inside?" he asked, his voice hesitant. Zara glanced at him with a mixture of impatience and something else. Was it sympathy? "The first symbol is hidden here, in plain sight. But it won't be easy to retrieve." She stepped forward and pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly as it swung open. The air inside was thick with dust, and the smell of old wood and forgotten time filled the space. Ethan hesitated for a moment, but followed Zara into the dim interior. The church was empty, its once gleaming pews now covered in layers of dust. Shafts of moonlight filtered through the tall, narrow windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Zara led him to the altar, where a strange, ancient-looking book lay open. The pages were yellowed with age, and the symbols scrawled on them seemed to shimmer with an eerie glow. "This is the first key," Zara said, her voice low. "It's the symbol of protection. We must touch it, in the right way, to unlock its power." Ethan looked down at the book, unsure of what to do. How do we know what the right way is? Trust your instincts, Zara replied, her eyes narrowing as she studied the book. The symbol will guide you. Ethan felt a strange pull toward the book, as though it were calling to him. He stepped closer and placed his hand on the page. As his fingers brushed the surface, a sharp, tingling sensation shot up his arm. He gasped and quickly pulled his hand back. What was that? He asked, his voice shaky. Zara didn't answer immediately, but her expression was one of concern. The power is awakening, she said quietly. The symbol is meant to test those who seek it. It will challenge your resolve, but you must continue. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to run, to escape from this place, but something deeper inside him told him that there was no going back now. Okay, he whispered, more to himself than to Zara. Let's do this. With a deep breath, he placed his hand back on the page. This time, the sensation was different. It wasn't sharp, but instead a warm, steady hum that seemed to spread through his entire body. The symbols on the page began to shift and glow brighter, and Ethan could feel a strange connection to them, as if they were speaking directly to him. The room seemed to tilt slightly, as though the very air around him had changed. Then, with a sudden rush of energy, the symbols on the page dissolved into the air, leaving nothing but a faint, glowing outline in their wake. Ethan stumbled back, his breath coming in short gasps. Zara was looking at him with an unreadable expression. You've done it, she said softly. The first key is unlocked. Now we move on. Ethan could hardly believe it. He had touched something that had changed the very fabric of reality, and he had no idea what that meant. But one thing was certain, the journey had just begun, and the forces Zara had spoken of were getting closer. Much closer. They had no time to lose. Ethan could feel the hum of energy in the air as they left the church. The night had grown even darker, and the streets felt strangely empty, as if the world itself had paused. He glanced at Zara, whose calm demeanor never seemed to waver. She moved with purpose, her steps steady despite the weight of everything that had just happened. The symbols from the book still burned in his mind, their glow lingering like an afterimage. He could still feel their pull, as if something deep within him had shifted. What happens now? Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper. Zara didn't look at him immediately, but continued walking. Now, we find the next symbol, she said, her tone focused. Each one is a piece of the puzzle. We need them all to stop what's coming. Ethan felt a chill as the words sank in. What exactly was coming? He had no answers, only more questions, and the strange feeling that time was running out. How many more are there? He asked, trying to keep his thoughts organized. There are 3 left, Zara replied, finally meeting his eyes. And we must be careful. The closer we get to gathering all the symbols, the more we will attract attention. There are forces out there that will stop at nothing to prevent us from succeeding. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. The danger was real, but for the first time, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. Something that mattered. They reached a small, abandoned park on the edge of town. Zara stopped, scanning the area. The second symbol is here, she said quietly. Ethan looked around. The park seemed empty, silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. But there was something about the place that felt off. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he felt like they were being watched. Zara turned to him. Stay close, she said, her voice low but urgent. We can't afford to let anything interrupt us now. They moved deeper into the park, weaving through the overgrown paths and broken benches. The air was thick with anticipation, and Ethan could feel his pulse quicken. As they neared the center of the park, Zara stopped in front of an old stone fountain, its water long dried up and covered in moss. She knelt down, running her fingers along the base of the fountain. Ethan watched, his heart racing as he realized what was happening. Slowly, the ground beneath them began to tremble. At first, it was subtle, a vibration that tickled the soles of his shoes. Then, with a sudden lurch, the stone fountain cracked open, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. Inside, nestled in a bed of ancient velvet, was the second symbol. It was a small, ornate key, its surface covered in strange, glowing runes. Zara reached in, her fingers brushing the key. As soon as her skin made contact, the entire fountain seemed to shimmer, as if the energy of the symbol was awakening. Ethan stepped back, his breath catching in his throat. The air seemed to grow heavier, more oppressive, as if something was drawing closer. Zara held the key up, her eyes closing for a moment as if she were attuning herself to its power. "The second key is now unlocked," she said, her voice steady but filled with an underlying tension. One step closer. Ethan's mind raced as he took in what had just happened. He had been a part of something that felt like it was unfolding across the very fabric of reality. He couldn't fully grasp it yet, but he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. And whatever was coming, it was coming fast. Zara stood up, slipping the key into a pouch at her side. "We must move quickly," she said. "The final symbols are closer than we think." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of what was to come settle over him. He had no idea what awaited them, but one thing was clear. He wasn't turning back now. They walked off into the night, the dark streets ahead feeling more like a path to something unknown, something inevitable. And Ethan was ready, even if he had no idea what that truly meant. Ethan felt the weight of the night pressing in on him as they walked through the quiet streets, the dim light from the street lamps casting long shadows on the pavement. The second symbol was now in their possession, and the gravity of their task seemed to intensify with every step they took. Zara walked beside him, her expression unreadable, her focus entirely on the path ahead. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. "How much longer do we have?" he asked, his voice low, almost drowned out by the sound of their footsteps. Zara glanced at him, her eyes sharp. "We have as long as it takes," she replied, though the underlying tension in her voice betrayed the urgency of their mission. "But the forces we are up against won't wait. They are always moving, always searching for a way to break through." The idea of these unseen forces, lurking just beyond the fabric of reality, sent a shiver down his spine. Ethan didn't want to think about it too much. His mind had already been stretched to its limits by everything he had learned in such a short time. "So what's next?" Ethan asked, eager to focus on something tangible. Zara didn't answer immediately, but after a moment, she spoke again. "We need to reach the third symbol," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's hidden in a place of power. The energy there is strong, and it will test us both." "A place of power?" Ethan repeated, confused. Zara's gaze hardened as she nodded. "Yes, it's a place that draws energy from both your world and mine, a junction where the lines between realities are thin. We will need to be careful." They arrived at an old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The building was dilapidated, its windows boarded up, and a faint sense of decay hung in the air. Zara stopped in front of the entrance, taking a deep breath. "This is it," she said, her voice steady. "The third symbol is inside. But we must be cautious. The closer we get, the more powerful the pull from the other side will become." Ethan nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel it now, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, like the world was holding its breath. Together, they stepped inside the warehouse, the door creaking as they pushed it open. The air was stale, and the floors groaned under their weight. Shadows danced on the walls, and for a moment, Ethan thought he saw something move in the corner of his eye. "Stay close," Zara murmured, her voice firm. "Trust your instincts, and stay focused." They moved through the maze of old crates and broken machinery, the air growing heavier with every step. Ethan felt a sense of foreboding, like something was watching them from the darkness. Finally, they reached the center of the warehouse, where a strange, pulsing light emanated from the floor. At the center of the light was a pedestal, and on it, the third symbol, a small, intricately carved stone. It was glowing faintly, its surface covered in strange markings that seemed to shift and change as Ethan looked at it. Zara stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the stone. "This is it," she said, almost reverently. "This is the key to stopping them." Ethan felt a rush of energy as he approached the pedestal. The air around him seemed to vibrate, and the light grew brighter. He reached out slowly, his fingers trembling as he touched the stone. As soon as his skin made contact, a surge of power shot through him, and the world around him seemed to warp and distort. For a moment, everything went black, and he felt as though he were falling through endless space. But then, just as suddenly, the feeling stopped, and the world snapped back into focus. He blinked, disoriented, his heart racing. The stone was now in his hand, its glow fading. Zara stood beside him, her face a mixture of relief and concern. You did it, she said softly, her voice filled with both awe and warning. The third symbol is unlocked. But we are not done yet. We must hurry. Ethan nodded, the weight of their mission settling on his shoulders. They had one symbol left to find, and the forces Zara had warned about were closing in. There was no turning back now. They had to finish what they had started before it was too late. Ethan and Zara stood in the dim light of the warehouse, the third symbol now safely in Ethan's hand. The strange, pulsing energy that had filled the space began to fade, but the sense of urgency only grew stronger. With every moment that passed, Ethan felt as if they were running out of time. The forces Zara had warned about were drawing closer, and the final symbol was still beyond their reach. One more, Zara said, her voice tight with determination. We're almost there, Ethan. But we have to move quickly. Ethan nodded, his mind still reeling from the energy he had felt coursing through him when he touched the stone. It had been unlike anything he had ever experienced, a surge of power that had left him shaken, but also strangely awake. Where is the final symbol? He asked, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside him. Zara glanced around, her eyes narrowing as if she were listening to something beyond the physical world. It's in a place where the barrier between worlds is weakest, she replied. A place of pure energy. It's hidden in a cave outside of town, deep in the mountains. That's where the rift will open. The rift, Ethan repeated, his heart skipping a beat. That's where it's all going to happen. Zara's face hardened. Yes, the rift will be the final tear in the fabric of reality. Once it opens fully, there will be no stopping it. The forces from the other side will flood through, and your world will be lost. But if we can reach the last symbol, we can close it. We can stop the rift from tearing your reality apart. Ethan felt the weight of her words pressed down on him. This wasn't just about symbols or ancient powers anymore. This was about saving everything he knew. The world as he knew it was hanging by a thread. Then let's go, he said, his voice low but filled with resolve. They left the warehouse quickly, their steps echoing in the empty streets. The air was thick with tension, the night strangely still. The world felt like it was holding its breath. As they drove toward the mountains, Ethan couldn't help but wonder what they would find at the end of this journey. The cave Zara spoke of was said to be ancient, hidden deep in the rock, a place where even the locals feared to tread. Ethan had never been much of an adventurer, but now, with everything on the line, he was ready to face whatever waited ahead. When they reached the foot of the mountain, Zara led the way, moving with a sense of purpose that Ethan couldn't help but admire. The path to the cave was steep, and the air grew thinner with every step. The mountains were silent, save for the sound of their breathing and the crunch of their footsteps on the rocky ground. After what felt like hours of climbing, they finally reached the entrance to the cave. It was small, barely visible from the outside, but Zara seemed to know exactly where to go. As they stepped inside, the air shifted, growing colder and denser. The walls of the cave seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, a faint glow emanating from deep within. The final symbol was close, but so were the forces Zara had warned about. Ethan could feel them now, like an unseen presence, pressing in from every direction. He didn't know what they would face inside the cave, but one thing was clear, they had come too far to turn back now. Ethan's heart raced as they stepped into the cave, the air growing colder with every step. The faint glow from within cast eerie shadows along the walls, and a strange, almost tangible pressure seemed to settle around them. It felt as if the very air was charged with energy, heavy with the weight of something ancient and powerful. Zara moved ahead, her footsteps sure and unwavering, but Ethan's mind was swirling with uncertainty. He could feel it now, the presence Zara had warned about. It was there, just beyond his reach, an invisible force that seemed to pulse and throb with every breath he took. The deeper they went, the more intense the sensation became. The walls of the cave were slick with moisture, the ground uneven, making each step feel like a journey further into the unknown. The faint light from the stone in Ethan's hand flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. "We're close," Zara said quietly, her voice barely audible over the sound of their footsteps. "The final symbol is just ahead." Ethan nodded, though his throat was dry, and he couldn't quite shake the feeling that someone, was watching them. The cave felt alive, as if it were aware of their presence, and that made every step feel like an intrusion. What happens when we find it? Ethan asked, his voice low. We'll use the symbol to seal the rift, Zara replied. It's the last piece of the puzzle. If we do this right, the forces trying to breach your world will be stopped. But it won't be easy. The rift will fight us. Fight us? Ethan echoed, his mind struggling to comprehend the weight of her words. Zara didn't answer immediately, but her expression grew more focused. Yes, she said. The rift is not something we can just close. It's a doorway to something far more dangerous. We'll need all the energy we can muster to shut it, and even then, we won't know if it will hold. They rounded a corner, and the glow from the stone in Ethan's hand brightened, illuminating a wide, open cavern ahead. At the center of the cavern, on a raised platform, stood an ancient altar. It was covered in intricate carvings, and at its center, the final symbol, a small, obsidian stone, its surface slick and black as night, glowed faintly. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine as they approached the altar. The stone seemed to beckon him, pulling him closer, its presence both inviting and terrifying. This is it, Zara said, her voice tight. Place the stone on the altar. It will activate the final seal. Ethan stepped forward, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for the obsidian stone. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, the cave seemed to shift, and a low hum filled the air. The walls vibrated, the glow from the stone intensifying, and the temperature dropped sharply. Ethan's breath came in visible puffs as he placed the stone on the altar. The cave rumbled as if it were alive, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. A loud, bone-chilling sound echoed through the cavern, as if the very earth was protesting. Ethan looked at Zara, his eyes wide with fear. What's happening? He shouted over the noise. It's reacting, Zara said, her face pale. It's trying to fight us. The air around them grew thick with energy, and Ethan could feel the pressure building. The rift was fighting back, and it was stronger than either of them had expected. Zara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos. We have to push through. Focus on the stone. Focus on the symbol. The rift is weak, just enough for us to seal it. Ethan's pulse raced as he concentrated, his eyes locked on the obsidian stone. The energy in the cave was overwhelming, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if they could hold on. But then, a sudden, intense pulse of light surged through the stone, and the rumbling stopped. The air grew still, and the pressure that had been weighing down on him vanished. The cave fell silent, save for the echo of their breathing. The final symbol had been activated. The rift had been sealed. But for a brief moment, as the echoes of the cave faded, Ethan felt something stir in the darkness, something watching them from the depths of the earth. The forces were not gone. Not yet.